the son of a young world, had only made a few thousand celestial cycles since Adam and Eve took their first barefoot steps on the grass of Eden. But the paradise garden was now only a distant memory, a whisper told beside flickering fires, a legend of a time when man still spoke with God in the evening breeze. The world outside that garden, the world where their descendants were multiplying, no longer retained its primordial peace. The earth created to be a home filled with laughter and love was now groaning under the weight of sin. Humankind had multiplied, building villages and settlements along the rivers and in the fertile plains, but with the increase in numbers came the spread of a toxic plague in the soul. The shadow of Cain, the first brother who stained the earth with his own blood, seemed to stretch long and cover the generations. 1, 2, human hearts grew hard. Selfishness, hatred, and violence became the common language. The fields not only yielded crops but were also soaked with the blood of disputes and wrongful retributions. People took what they wanted by the strength of their fists, and justice belonged to the stronger. Oaths became worthless and loyalty was a foreign concept. In the noisy and chaotic settlements, the thoughts in people's hearts were only evil. Schemes were woven in the darkness. Sweet words, concealed daggers, and a smile could be the sign of a deadly trap. They erected idols of stone and wood, silent creations of their own hands, and bowed down to worship them, forgetting the living Creator who had given them breath. They immersed themselves in carnal pleasures, in endless revelries, trying to fill the invisible void in their souls with fleeting and frivolous things. But amidst this world decaying in sin, there was a man like a lotus flower rising from the mud. His name was Enoch. Enoch was not a king, a warrior, or a man of high status. He was an ordinary man, a husband, a father. But one thing made him completely different from those around him. While the world walked in darkness, Enoch chose to walk with God. Every morning, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the leaves, Enoch did not rush into the struggle for survival. He found a quiet place, looked up at the sky, and conversed with the one who created it. He told him of his joys, his sorrows, his struggles, and in the silence of his soul he listened to the voice of God, a gentle yet authoritative voice guiding him on the path of righteousness. Enoch's life was a hymn that went against the harsh sounds of the age. When people deceived each other in trade, Enoch remained honest. When people retaliated with violence, Enoch chose forgiveness. When people indulged in vulgar talk, Enoch's lips only uttered words of edification and love. He taught his children, including Methuselah, about the fear of Jehovah God, about the story of Adam and Eve, and about the promise of a Redeemer to come. 3. His home was an oasis of peace in a desert of chaos. But living righteously in a wicked generation was never easy. His neighbors looked at him with contempt. They mocked his weakness, calling his honesty foolishness. Enoch, they jeered, you are wasting your life. Look at us, we have everything we want. Where is your God? Why aren't you stronger, richer than us? Enoch did not argue. He just quietly lived by his faith, and his life itself became a silent but powerful testimony, a judgment on their sinful actions. His presence, like light, made the surrounding darkness more apparent, and that angered those who loved the darkness. So why had the world become so wicked? Why could humans created in the image of God sink so deep into depravity? The answer lies in a rebellion that occurred even before man existed. A powerful angel with surpassing beauty and wisdom allowed pride to sprout in his heart. He wanted to be worshipped like the Creator. He initiated a rebellion in heaven and was cast down. The Bible calls him Satan the adversary. It was he in the form of a serpent who deceived Eve in the Garden of Eden, sowing the seeds of doubt and disobedience in the human heart. 4. 5. And now he was gloating over his work. He didn't need to appear in person, didn't need to speak sweet words. He just needed to cultivate the seeds of sin already present in the human heart. He fanned the flames of jealousy, nurtured greed, and whispered into the ears of the weak that violence was the answer. He tried to make everyone wicked, to prove that God's creation was a failure, that humans like him were just selfish rebels. And he had succeeded. The world had become his playground, a place full of suffering and chaos, just as he desired. One day, as Enoch was walking on a hill, immersed in the presence of God, a solemn silence enveloped him. The sky seemed closer, and the wind stopped blowing. Then he heard the voice of Jehovah God. It was not a sound heard by the ear, but a deep and clear awareness in his spirit. Enoch, my son, the voice echoed in his soul, the wickedness of man has come up before me. I see the earth is filled with violence, and the thoughts of their hearts are only evil continually. I will not tolerate this forever. Now you must go and speak to them. A message was given to Enoch, a heavy prophecy. He had to tell the people what they never wanted to hear. He had to proclaim the coming judgment. Enoch's heart pounded. He knew the people he had to face. They were hardened, their ears closed to reason. They would not welcome a message of judgment. They would see it as a curse, an insult. Tell them, the voice continued, that one day the Lord will come with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment on all, and to convict all the ungodly of all their ungodly deeds which they have committed in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Enoch felt the weight of the mission on his shoulders. He was just an ordinary man. How could he face an entire hostile world? But then an extraordinary strength filled his heart. It was a courage that did not come from himself, but from the one who sent him. He knew he was not alone. He was walking with God, and there was nothing to fear. With iron determination, Enoch descended from the hill and walked into the bustling markets, the crowded public places. He stood up, his voice clear and strong, drowning out the noises of daily life. "O people of the land, hear the word of Jehovah God," he proclaimed. "You have lived in sin, your hands are stained with blood, and your hearts are full of wicked schemes. You have forgotten the Creator and worshiped the works of your own hand. Therefore know this: one day God will come to judge. He will destroy all the wicked." At first the crowd was silent, surprised by this man's boldness. But the silence quickly turned to murmurs, then to mockery. "Listen to this crazy old man," a brawny man laughed. "Judgment, where is his God? Why doesn't he come and judge us right now? He just wants to scare us," a woman chimed in, "so we will live miserably like him." But as Enoch continued to speak, unfazed by their insults, their ridicule turned to rage. His words were like a mirror reflecting their ugliness, and they could not bear the reflection. "Shut up," one shouted, a stone in his hand. "Do you dare to curse us?" The crowd became aggressive. They surrounded Enoch, their eyes blazing with fury. Perhaps they would have tried to kill him right then, to silence the prophetic voice they did not want to hear. They pushed him, threw stones, and cursed him. But an invisible power protected Enoch. He stood firm in the midst of the storm of hatred, his face calm but his eyes full of authority. He had said what needed to be said. The seed had been sown. Enoch became an outcast. But he was not alone. He knew he was doing what was right in God's eyes. Every day he continued to walk with him, and that closeness was his greatest source of strength and comfort. However, the merciful God did not want his faithful servant to suffer for too long amidst such a wicked and hostile generation. He had a special reward for Enoch. Enoch lived on earth for 365 years. Why do we say only lived to be 365? Because in the early days of humanity, people had extraordinary health and lifespans far longer than we do today. Living 700, 800, or even 900 years was common. Enoch's own son Methuselah lived to be 969 years old, becoming the longest living person recorded in history. 3. Compared to his contemporaries, Enoch's 365-year life was indeed short. But the end of Enoch's life was as unusual as his life itself. He did not grow old and frail. He was not sick. He did not lie on his deathbed. The Bible does not say that Enoch died. Instead, it records something miraculous. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. One evening, as Enoch was walking on his usual path, he felt the presence of God closer than ever before. The conversation between him and his Creator was no longer separated by the veil of the physical world. His steps became lighter, and the burden of the sinful world seemed to vanish. He did not look back. He simply kept walking, stepping out of this visible world and straight into eternity with the friend he had walked with his entire life. He was taken away, removed from the wickedness that was about to erupt, a reward for his unwavering faithfulness. After Enoch was gone, the world lost a light of righteousness. The warning voice fell silent, and darkness quickly enveloped everything. If people had been wicked before, they now became many times worse. With no one to remind them of the right path, they plunged into sin like moths to a flame. The Bible describes this period in terrible terms. The imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, and the earth was filled with violence. Violence was no longer isolated conflicts, but had become a way of life. Blood flowed like rivers. The strong oppressed the weak without mercy. Moral corruption spread everywhere. People's hearts grew as cold as stone. They no longer knew love, compassion, or forgiveness. And in that dark context, Satan prepared his next move. He had found a new way, a more insidious method to intervene directly in the human world, to accelerate the process of decay, and to bring their depravity to an irredeemable peak. A new, darker chapter of human history was about to begin, one that would cause God himself to grieve that he had made man on the earth. The world after Enoch was drifting toward a terrifying purification, a great flood that would submerge all but one righteous family. But that is another story.